This is Speak Your Mind on Gold FM and also FBC TV. And of course, the last date for elections is the 21st of November, so we can safely say elections is close. The Fijian Elections Office is helping people to learn how to register to vote, what documentations they need to present, where their polling stations will be, and so forth. And we'll cover that a little bit more on the show. But today, let's just begin the discussion by focusing on you being an informed voter. Our in-studio guest is the Supervisor of Elections, Mohammed Sanim. Welcome, sir. And also the Acting Director for Communications. Hey, Edwin. All right. So, well, just to begin, sir, first things first. Elections are a vital part of democracy. Democracy, what is it?
Yes, well said. Elections is a stepping stone and the most important element of democracy. Democracy doesn't end with elections. It actually starts with an election and it continues. And when you have another election, that's actually entering into real democracy. The main concept being that individuals or citizens have the right to freely choose a candidate of their own choosing to be part of government, to be their representative in parliament and in lawmaking, as well as in the decision on policy making for the next period, which in Fiji is 4 years. Yes.
So certainly, at the end of the day, the people hold the power. All right, so we're also adopting the Bangkok Declaration on Free and Fair Elections. What is the definition of free and fair? What is important for the voters to understand here?
Well, thank you for asking that very important question. The Constitution requires the Electoral Commission to conduct an election, conduct a free and fair election in accordance with the laws governing elections in Fiji. Based on the MOG report of 2014, the Multinational Observer Group, which is MOG, found that the electoral framework, the legal framework in Fiji is sufficient for the conduct of credible elections. What we did was we looked at the conversation around elections, and we noticed that there was a lot of conversation around an individual person's definition of free and fair elections. We noticed several political parties coming up with their own definitions of free and fair elections. A lot of it was just pure political campaign. What do I mean with pure political campaign? If, for example, a political party wrote to the Electoral Commission and said, let's reintroduce constituencies, and the Electoral Commission said the law does not allow for constituencies, there's only one constituency, which is the whole country, the political party would then stand up and say, oh, it's not going to be a free and fair election because they didn't hear what we said. Then the next political party stands up and says, I want this. And if the Electoral Commission said the law doesn't allow it, then they say, oh, it's not going to be a free and fair election because they didn't allow that. And so on and so forth. So what the Bangkok principles is, the closest regional grouping next to Pacific is the Asian region. A lot of similarity in Fiji and the Asian region as well in terms of electoral practices, in terms of electoral requirements, as well as electoral challenges. And so we looked around the world as to see what the international community developed as norms for the conduct of free and fair elections. First and foremost, the Fijian Elections Office will follow the Electoral Act. But there are things that you can still do within the legal framework to promote a free and fair election. So we looked up what the principles are, what are the baseline standards. Now there are a couple out there, the first one being the Inter-Parliamentary Union's Declaration on Principles of Free and Fair Election. And the second is the most recent one, which is the 2012 declaration adopted by the Asia Forum on Free and Fair Elections, the ANFREL, in Bangkok in 2012. Now the declaration itself is not binding on Fiji, but it does help develop the discussion on what is free and fair. It's not any person's opinion on something that they were deprived of that makes the election free and fair, but the overall baseline principles to determine a free and fair election. This was missing from the discussion previously because everybody came up with their own definitions because whatever they wanted could not be done. Now, one of the other things that I have to mention is in an election, every political party will propose reforms that will tip the balance in their favor. That is why political parties exist, to contest the election and win. They even field agents on election day who are responsible for ensuring that the interest of the political party is protected. So every party fields an agent for their own self. They don't field another party's agent for themselves. No, they field their own agents. In many countries, in many instances, political parties also cheat to win elections. You will hear of ballot box stuffing. You will hear of polling station blockades. You will hear of bribery, vote buying, and all sorts of election related crimes, I should say, in order to ensure that the political party wins. Now, with that as a background, when a political party makes a suggestion, it is always designed to benefit that political party. I would doubt that it is possible for a party to not do that. Now, the laws that are already in place is designed to give a guideline as to how the election is to be conducted. So the statements that are coming out regarding free and fair have always been skewed. So the Fijian Elections Office decided to find the most closest regional adoption of principles that would define how to conduct a free and fair election, and the closest being the Delhi Declaration, the Bangkok Declaration, which lays out a framework for election management bodies, for political parties, for international observers, for local observers to actually assess the process. And you will find that in some of the most complained about elections, international observers still find that the election was free and fair because the complaints that are being raised are insignificant to affect the entire credibility of the election, or complaints are being raised without any evidence, like in Fiji. Mr. Chaudhary has repeatedly from 2014 raised that the election was rigged, but he has no evidence. And I think Mr. Chaudhary needs to stop doing that now, because people actually know he has no evidence. Then there are instances where people actually come up and say, I got a vote in this station, but they didn't give me one. Those are things that come up. But in entirety, does it affect the overall outcome? That's part of the principles. So we thought to introduce the whole country to an internationally recognized set of documents that define free and fair and set the basic standards. And it is named Bangkok Principle because the gathering that adopted the principle happened in Bangkok. It doesn't mean it's Thailand's principles that is being implemented in Fiji. No, this is an Asian region adoption, composition body of governments, election management bodies, and civil society. And this is what was the first document NFREL released. And the Fijian Elections Office decided to just publish it in Fiji for everybody to know. So every single person in this country can analyze our elections based on these standards to see whether we meet international requirements or not.
Mohammed Saneem, the supervisor of elections on Speak Your Mind. And of course, listeners, just remind you, if you have any queries, now's the time to get your clarification. You can speak directly to Mr. Saneem by calling 322-0906. I will join you again after the break. This is Speak Your Mind on Gold FM and FBC TV. And of course, our in-studio guest today is the Supervisor of Elections, Mohammed Saneem, and also the Acting Director for Communications, Edwin Nund. So just continuing from, where we left off about free and fair elections, explain to us, what does free and fair elections mean for political parties?
So, first of all, free and fair elections in relation to political parties allows political parties to participate in the election without restrictions. Or should I say unnecessary restrictions. This means political parties are free to campaign, they're free to do their pocket meetings, and they're free to state their policies and allow for discussions on their policies. If I elaborate a little bit on each of these points, first of all, taking Fiji as an example, political parties have been campaigning from 2014. It is a rather strange thing, because usually after an election things have to go back to normal, and in our case we've had continuous campaigns since 2014. We hope that as the country's democracy matures, political parties will realize that The campaign period is there for a reason. Afterwards, there is no campaign period. But there is no harm done. They have been free to campaign from 2014. You will see social media pages of people like Niko Nawaikula and various other members of parliament, as well as political parties, which has continuously held campaign messages. Now, the other part is about holding pocket meetings and things like that. Political parties are already out there in numbers, having political party meetings in various communities. Some parties have told us we've covered the whole country already once and we're going around again. So this means parties have had the opportunity to campaign significantly throughout the country. Political parties have also been able to push out campaign materials. A lot of it, you see billboards around the country, you see social media campaigns ongoing, as well as you can see some competition within the parties going on in social media. So that is how the framework is set up, the ground is set up, and the kickoff time is once the election date is announced for formal campaign to begin, and then we will probably see manifestos, we will see party policy publications, we will see calculations, we will see rebuttals of calculations, I hope. We will see rebuttals of policies, and we'll see, as you say, you know, political playfield is one of those areas where you get a lot of surprises, get a lot of counter attacks, and you also see some withdrawals. It is how it works. A lot of people who may be 32, 33 will actually see this for the second time in a conscious sense that there is some competition. You'll see a lot of people who are not familiar with elections talking about how they find this interesting or surprising or disgusting. But this is how elections work. The Fijian Elections Office will promote a very clean election, free from smear campaigns, free from religious vilification or racial discrimination or any sort of evil to be used in the election framework.
Mm-hmm. So just going back to our earlier focus on Fijians being informed voters, in Article 3 of the Bangkok Declaration, they speak about voter education and how it's necessary to allow voters to make informed choices and participate fully in an election. What programs are being carried out by the Fijian Elections Office to facilitate this?
If I may take that question, if I may, Gwen, currently, as of right now, we have our second round of the Know Your Election awareness campaign that is being conducted in parts of Fiji. We've also done a nationwide Know Your Election awareness drive between March and April of this year, where we visited each and every community, settlement, village and schools, and we also visited business houses on request, where we the whole intention was to educate the voters to ensure that they knew how to vote, when to vote, where to vote. And this was a very successful campaign. We had a lot of feedback about the effectiveness of our teams reaching out to these areas. The point here was that we wanted to ensure that we covered as much of Fiji, the whole of Fiji, within a time that allowed voters to absorb the information that they were being given and to ensure that they were able to interpret and understand it, so that when we say an informed voter, they have to know that when they walk into their polling venue on election day or via pre-poll, they know what to expect. There are no surprises for them, and they are comfortable with the environment. They know that our staff, the election day staff, are there to help them and to make sure that they have a pleasant experience when they go to vote, and that their vote counts, their vote is valid, and that they are sure about the candidate of their choice and their number. They have done their research and they're able to cast a valid vote. We've done that exercise in March and April. That's happening right now. But between this time, the whole of 2018 to date has been dedicated largely to voter awareness. Our presence here today with the supervisor in itself is a form of awareness we are doing, where we are reaching out to voters as much as possible. We've done multiple publications in the newspapers. We have commercials running on radio and television, and this will be amplified coming closer to the election date.
Still on your role, of education, that's one of your function as well. Edwin, you talked about, being an informed voter. You touched on the process and the system that's in place. How about, voters being more knowledgeable about issues and the positions of candidates?
This is something that even the Supervisor of Elections has been talking about, the need for voters to start doing their research. Start looking at the comments and the positions that politicians and political parties are taking, and to do their own comparisons. I'm sure he will have more to add to this, but our position at the Fijian Elections Office is that for voters, they have the right to vote, but they also have some responsibilities, one of which is to ensure that they do their homework. And I'm sure the Supervisor of Elections would want to add to it.
I'd like to hear from you. How people should just come to their own conclusions. How does being an informed voter go hand in hand with the right to vote?
Everything that Edwin said that we do is designed to give the voter with the minimum required tools to cast a valid vote. Whom to vote for is that ultimate decision that the voter has to make. There are various sectors within the electoral framework that would aim to go and sort of educate the voter, and they would try and influence the voter. We have recently seen some women's rights groups saying, vote for women. That's the choice of the voter ultimately. But these types of advocacy messages are going to become more and more available right now. I've heard yesterday that some NGOs have also printed some booklets and things. So all this happens because everybody wants to promote their advocacy work, and through that wants the voter to vote for a particular line or a particular candidate or a particular political party. So the Fijian Elections Office has our intention is to give that voter the tool required to mark the vote. The thinking side of things still rests with the voter because we have to respect the choice.
This is Speak Your Mind, and of course, if you have any questions, if you need anything clarified, the Supervisor of Elections is in studio right now. He will answer your questions directly. You can call us on 3220906. This is Speak Your Mind on Gold FM and FBC TV. So if we can just go back to the Bangkok Declaration for Free and Fair Elections, if you look at Article 6, the accuracy of the voter list. How are you ensuring the accuracy of the voter list? It's all too common to find multiple registrants or those deceased or fictitious names, and these can seriously undermine the legitimacy of the elections. So how are you ensuring that it's complete, it's current, and it's accurate?
First of all, it's no longer common to find fictitious duplicates and deceased persons on the voter roll. That used to be a thing of the past, 2006 elections, maybe earlier. But Fiji has adopted an electronic voter registration mechanism that allows the Fijian Elections Office to physically verify individuals through data that we record, such as biometrics, your iris distance, iris scan, as well as your facial size. So we have an electronic mechanism of registration of voters. This prevents duplicates. It highlights duplicates if there are any. Our matching rate is 75%, so mother and son can be easily picked up because of the immense similarities in the biometrics. But so far, the Fijian Elections Office has had only one instance of fraud in relation to the voter registration details, as well as only about 300 people have been matched, and we have published for them to come and talk to us before we remove them from the voters list. So the voters list in Fiji is one of the we have several mechanisms to ensure that the voters list is clean. We do data verification with other agencies around the country, like Fiji National Provident Fund, the Birth, Deaths and Marriages Registry, the Land Transport Authority, as well as we do physical data verification by printing the entire voters list and putting it out in the public for people to come and check their details and sign off on it. We did this last year, and we received about 240,000 people who came to us and they signed on the voters list and said this list is correct. So we regularly do this. You will notice that if there is a cyclone or a disaster, the Fijian Elections Office is one of the first agencies to go out for voter card issues. This is to allow people to quickly get their replacement card, and they go and use that for other government aid as well as services. So those are some of the ways. And the last one I have to tell you is that in Fiji, we are now setting a precedent for the entire Pacific, because our voter card has become the most universally accepted ID in this country. People have the voter card as their first form of ID for every service in this country. And this means there is an indirect requirement for people to ensure that their details on that card is up to date as that point. So this means that our voters list has the most current detail of every voter at any point in time. Because if your detail is not current on the list, even though there is no election, FNPF might not process your application because your details are out of date. So that keeps the voters active in terms of keeping a current voters card. So in terms of the roll, all this affects the cleanliness of the roll, and the roll is up to date. In any event in Fiji, if someone still tries to vote with an ID, you have to be on the voters list. So the security is that your name has to be on the list for you to be able to vote. If your name is not on the list, you can't vote. So we will be putting photographs of people on the voters list this time. So when you come to vote, apart from your details verification, your photo will be used to verify whether you are actually the person you are saying you are or you're not. So all these securities are built in to ensure that the voters are only those who are registered are able to vote, and those who are no longer around, even though their name may be on the list, they cannot vote because the photo is used as a verification.
Okay. So just, going back to the Bangkok Declaration for Free and Fair Elections, elections can be an overwhelming time, for voters because of all the information that comes to them from different sources, and now you've got Facebook as well, and predominantly to news outlets. Let's just look at Article 9. Impartial coverage by the media. We're talking here about a free and fair elections. Are media organizations being monitored to ensure they're providing equitable space and time to all political parties and candidates?
Well, the Fijian Elections Office, we don't control the media. We have power of persuasion over the media, and we have already conducted workshops for the media as well as had meetings with senior representatives from all the media outlets in Fiji to ensure that they oblige with this. It is ultimately the choice of the media. A lot of the media in Fiji, all the media are private companies, so I know profit drives a lot of the content, and we only can persuade the media organizations to ensure that they give coverage to all parties on an equal basis. And in any event, as a journalist, you would also agree that media will always prefer something that makes news and becomes the news and stays the news, so that they can always be on top of the ratings. So aside from profit, ratings also determines what goes in content, and we'd leave it to the media to best deal with it. So far, I think I have seen a high level of coverage for all political parties in all media outlets in Fiji, and we only hope that it continues to give them that access.
Let's look at voting and elections day. When you look at the management of polling stations, how is FEO ensuring that mismanagement doesn't occur that can deny people the democratic right to vote?
So various ways we are doing that. One of the ways is that we have built a lot of reconciliations and audit mechanisms within our processes. So on election day, every process that a presiding officer is carrying out actually has a second process that follows on from there. So if one is not done properly, number two will be affected. And also we have agents who can be present to observe the polling as it takes place. Our voters are more aware about the election process than they were previously, so they can also act as an audit mechanism. Then we have lastly observers from international countries who will be out in numbers to also observe the election to ensure that all processes that the FEO set up was complied with.
And we're also offering you the opportunity to ask your questions before you cast your valuable vote. Get your clarification on any issue on the election process, okay? Mohammed Sanim, the Supervisor of Elections, is right here to answer your questions. 3220906 is the number to call. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind. And of course, our in-studio guest is the Supervisor of Election, Mohammed Sanim. And well, to kick off this hour, we have a call on the line. He's got a question for you, sir. Go ahead, Amenatave.
Oh, I just want to ask the Supervisor of Election, what is because Fiji-wide is a constituency. It's very hard to find these election MPs here. They are non-accountable. If you think like that, Fiji-wide is a constituency. What do you think of that?
I have to apologize. Can you say your question again, please? I didn't get the first part of your question.
What I'm saying is that Fiji-wide is a constituency, first past the post, proportional representation.
Yes.
There's no accountability for these MPs. Election is all about accountability. You do things and people choose you. What's the story here?
All right. Thank you very much. The constituency, in terms of Fiji, yes, it is a single constituency. In a single constituency system, the requirement of the Electoral Act, the Political Parties Act, is that a political party must establish offices all over the 4 divisions. Now, definitely we have some political parties that have not done that. So when you question accountability, it becomes a difficult issue because the political party has not opened offices all over the country. We are once again a persuasive authority in this regard. The political parties should take that opportunity and open offices all over the country. Some parties have them, some parties don't. So in terms of your accountability, this is a question that you have to ask the party that you voted for in terms of your requirements and what actually happened. Now, even if you didn't vote for a party, you can still walk into their offices around the country and put forward your questions and queries to these offices and seek your answers. The last alternative is to actually walk up in Parliament and ask the MPs directly if you have any requirements from them in relation to your request. So the accountability question works differently in a single constituency versus a multiple constituency. Previously, when we had multiple constituencies, you could directly say that this person represents my area, so if the road is not fixed, I'll go and talk to this person. Single constituency systems actually promote a national approach to activities, so the contributions have to be made at a national level, and this is where you can actually participate in the consultancy exercises around the country to ensure your voice is actually considered in terms of your requests. You will notice in the last 4 years to action the single constituency electoral system, government has been having a significant number of consultation roadshows exercises. This is how a single constituency system works. The government has to have a national approach when it comes to policy making, and the opposition also has to actively work within the national approach to ensure that it is able to get its views heard and its counter views and analysis also heard. So this is how it works. It's early days, so questions of accountability, transparency actually are good. They are good for the discussion to promote good governance as well as to promote a better and greater understanding of the electoral system that we are in.
Continue to participate in today's discussion. You can call 3220906. Sir, I just need you to respond to some questions raised by SODELPA Party Leader Sitiveni Rambuka on the voter roll anomalies and how you're ensuring it's a level playing field for all political parties. Okay, give us some polling venue verifications. As highlighted by Mr. Rambuka, are there any other polling stations being managed from divisions other than where they are geographically located, similar to the 208 polling stations?
So I think Mr. Rambuka got some fundamentals wrong. First and foremost, the Fijian Elections Office decides whether the central office looks after a venue in Rekereki, or it looks after a venue in Suva, or it looks after a venue in Navua. Our own internal administrative arrangements are designed for fairness in terms of workload on staff. It is designed for manageability in terms of the venues itself. It is also designed to ensure that we have sufficient backup materials as well as backup people to manage this on that one particular day. So, because Mr. Rambuka didn't ask us all these questions and instead shot out in the media to publicly question these things, I think Mr. Rambuka is severely misinformed. In fact, a lot of things that have been alluded to in those statements are wrong. Wrong because they cannot be factually verified. Also, if you will notice that in Saturday's Fiji Sun, Mr. Rambuka continued to publish this incorrect information despite giving clarifications on these matters. Somehow their calculation is based on old figures. Earlier on in the year, I told them that there is a likely chance that there will be 1,437 polling venues. Now, polling venues is determined by the number of voters that register. And since registration is ongoing, we are still not able to give you a fixed figure because there might be changes. There may be reductions in some places and increments in other places. So we found a lot of improper calculations that did not support valid arguments about the voter roll. I think it is also something that I saw as a rushed statement to somehow continue to attack the electoral process, rather failed, misconceived attacks. And I think that sooner or later, these political parties need to realize that the people don't really believe when they start attacking the process without consulting the Fijian Elections Office. One other point that I wanted to talk about, the 208 venues. In the media statement, the FEO said that the Director Operations of the Fijian Elections Office has the prerogative of determining who manages the venues at what location. Now, there is a misconception being spread around that there is a constituency in Serua, there's a constituency in Namosi, there's a constituency council for Rewa, constituency council for Maduata. This is political parties' strategy. There is no such thing in Fiji. The whole country is a single constituency. In fact, we've received reports that some places candidates are actually going and says you have to vote for someone from within our constituency. There is no constituency. There's only one constituency, the whole country. You can vote for anybody from anywhere in the country. So either it is deliberate misinformation to ensure that some votes are coming their way, or it is just designed to confuse voters around the electoral process to distribute the election. So the Fijian Elections Office will stand its ground. Once the writ is issued, we will be able to publish the final list of venues and polling stations from around the country. Until then, it is provisional. If Mr. Rambuka finds any issues in the list, in good faith, ethically, he should relate that to us, because that's how we will improve the voter list, not through a public confrontation or criticism over the media to try and garner some support or sympathy. Unfortunately, I think that is what is not realized, and as we have said already, they must approach the Fijian Elections Office with corrections if they feel some need to be done on the voters list, because that's how the electoral system operates.
Well, after the break, Mr. Salim, we'll get you to continue to answer other questions raised by SODEL Party leader Sitiveni Rambuka. This is Speak Your Mind, and just getting right back into it, Mr. Salim. Questions raised by SODEL Party leader Sitiveni Rambuka. And Mr. Rambuka also claims that FEO delivered the wrong voter roll to SODEL PA. Was it a mistake that you are not admitting to?
So, as I said to you already, the errors that apparently Mr. Rambuka has highlighted is not actual errors, but in fact it is information that Mr. Rambuka's party should have clarified with us so that they actually understood why those things were like that. So it's not the wrong list or incorrect list. It is pure failure to understand why the list is like that. So if they had asked us directly, we would have explained this to them thoroughly, and they would not have made such statements.
And another
hopefully, yes.
And he also raised, why are polling venues for disciplined services not listed?
So polling venues for disciplined services cannot be finalized today, because the requirement is once we know what the date is for the writ, we will know what soldiers are going to be in the barracks. And once we know that, then we will be able to finalize the list by moving those soldiers from the actual polling venues they are registered in into those 13 venues. So this is a waiting game for us to know when the date of the writ is, so that we can move the soldiers into the pre-poll stations. I think this is an operational thing that even ordinary people will understand.
Mr. Mbok also questioned the 3,263 missing votes. The question is, where are these missing and identified voters? Are they overseas, or are these voters from disciplined services?
So we don't know what he's talking about, because he never sent us anything. So tomorrow he'll wake up and say 10,000 voters are missing from the roll, and the media will publish it. So the fact of the matter is, if Mr. Mbuka has substance in his statements, by now he would have sent us the entire list and said, here, this is it. But I think it's just a smear campaign against the voters list, and I think it is rather shameful that this party has chosen this approach rather than ethically dealing with the Fijian Elections Office and sending us proper details of their observations to allow us to, if there were any issues, we would be able to deal with them. The FEO is always available for these sorts of things. Now, we have also got a procedure for voters list verification. Parties can object to a voter as well. If a registered voter is there, a party can object to say this person is not qualified to be registered, or the details of this person is not correct. They haven't exhausted all those mechanisms, but 3,000 voters are missing. We don't know who did the calculation. There is somebody called Chale Bamba, who holds out to be a representative of SODELPA, continues to publish various calculations and figures on social media. One of the things he did once was he said there are 40,000 new voters on the roll. He said 800,000 voters are now on the roll, 140,000 actually. So these are social media trolls who actually continue to publish incorrect information designed to mislead voters. So my message to SODELPA and every representative of that party, including all other parties, is that if you do not have the correct information, the Fijian Elections Office stands ready to provide you with that. But if you don't have that, going into the media, confusing voters does not promote a free and fair election. It actually works against it. So if you set up an environment where, because of your own actions, the election is not free and fair, that's your own doing. And lately we've seen various other elections where candidates have been claiming that the election will not be free and fair, such as the US election, where the current president went into power on the allegation that the election is already rigged. And now he's holding power, and you see the amount of reactions that president is getting from ordinarily people regarding the position he's holding. So this is just an attack on the electoral process. Baseless, misconceived views and calculations are being presented in the hope to gain some sympathy. And the Fijian Elections Office is the main source of information. We hold custody over the voters list. The information, the data we published is very, very detailed, and any person can actually analyze. It's not fair to just look at the current number of registered voters and subtract it from the voters who died and say, okay, this many voters are now missing. There are other people who actually register within that period of time. So it's an ongoing process, and it just purely spills out the lack of understanding of how the election operates and how the voter roll operates. And that I can say is rather worrying, because in the last 4 years, SODELPA has had numerous attendances at all FEO workshops. Their General Secretary Litio Gyonimbaravi has been a constant figure at all our workshops, and still these kinds of things are misconceived. So at this point in time, I urge SODELPA to ethically write to the Fijian Elections Office, let us know what your exact findings are so that we can verify it. If there are errors, the Fijian Elections Office is at the right time to correct it because the roll has not been finalized yet.
Speaking to us then, Mohammed Saneem, the Supervisor of Elections, and of course, there's so much to cover, but time has caught up with us. I thank you so much for being part of the show today, and I thank the two gentlemen again, Edwin Nunn, the Acting Director of Communications, and of course, Mr. Mohammed Saneem. Until next Tuesday, this is Speaker of Mind. You have a great week ahead.